Now, as we've been saying this morning, pensioners are to be offered far more opportunity to dip into their retirement funds whenever they need to. The pension tax bill, which is being published today, means that from next April, the over 55s can take out cash from their private pensions when they like and get 25% tax-free each time. Is it a good idea, then, that we should have more control over our pension pots, or will people simply be encouraged to fritter away their savings and behave profligately? Let's ask Tom McPhail. He's head of pensions research at Hargreaves Lansdown. He joins us from Bristol. In central London, the studio there, Kate Andrews, who's from the Adam Smith Institute, a think tank which promotes free markets and indeed free societies too. Good morning to both of you. Tom, let's start with you, because I know you've got misgivings about what the government's planning here. Tell us why.
I'm quite comfortable with the overall direction of travel for the government. I think their long-term ambition is good, to encourage people to take responsibility for their savings and to encourage people to engage with their retirement plans. So that's the good bit. My worry is how they're going about it. It's being driven by very short-term political considerations. They're rushing these reforms through. There's not been any due consideration of whether they're actually going to work. We've got millions of people who've got no experience at running these pension pots and knowing how much it's safe to take out of these pension pots. And perhaps worst of all, there's currently no regulatory protection in place for them. So if they get put into the wrong funds, if they've been given poor information and they make bad decisions, they'll have no comeback on all of that. And this is all going to happen within the next 6 months. It's a recipe for disaster.
Kate, you take the view that this money belongs to the people who've paid into these funds, and ergo they should decide what they do with the money. And if they want to blow it irresponsibly, then so be it. They are the authors of their own misfortune.
It most certainly does fall into their remit of what they want to do with the money. And it will be interesting to see what happens over the next 6 months, because frankly, the reason that this political decision is coming in is because it's an incredibly popular one. People are trusted throughout their whole lives to make financially safe decisions. We trust people to get jobs, we trust them to pay their taxes and to pay their bills, we trust them to feed into the state pension pot as well as their own pension pot, and yet for some reason at the end of all that, the state turns to the earner and says that you're not possibly capable of taking care of your own finances and you're not able to spend the money that you've earned. Most people are going to be able to know exactly how to spend their money on their needs, and it's great that the government is offering reforms that will allow people easier access to their money.
Tom, I know one of your misgivings in this is that, you know, people know how to budget things, but one thing they are not accustomed to budgeting is the length of their life. You know, and that's what they're called upon to do here, isn't it? They've got to work out, they've got to make a best guess as to how long they want a regular income for.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm absolutely comfortable with the principle of encouraging investors to take responsibility for their own money. It's the unfamiliarity of the challenges that they're now going to be presented with. Knowing a suitable asset allocation strategy, where should your money be invested, and crucially, how much it is prudent to take out of your pension pot. Very easy to take too much, run out too quickly, or indeed to not take enough and perhaps to live a very poor lifestyle, to not put the heating on because you're worried about running your pension pot down because you don't know what is safe. You know, you might live until you're 70 or 90 or 100.
Yeah, Tom, to be fair, Tom, I mean, we're not talking about people ending up in such straitened circumstances, are we?
Is significant.
Well, because there's always going to be the state pension, isn't there? I mean, the people will not have to turn off the heating.
Yes, but that's not an adequate protection. No. That's not an adequate protection, because you're looking at a state pension which might only be £6,000, £7,000, £8,000 a year. Not everyone's even going to get the full state pension. So the full state pension will be around £7,500 a year, but not everyone will get that. Now, if you've just spent the last few years drawing down on your pension pot, perhaps living a reasonably good lifestyle, to suddenly have to adjust to living on just £7,500 a year, I think that's going to be a pretty tough challenge for a lot of people. And when the government says they're relaxed about that people can go and blow their money on a Lamborghini, and if they then have to fall back on the state pension, that's all right. Do you know what? I just don't believe them.
Kate, you say... So, go on, Kate.
Well, you keep saying the word perfect. You keep saying that we have to protect these people. People are great at budgeting. People are what keep the government running. People are budgeting their households, their food supplies. They're budgeting what they need to pay for taxes, what they need to pay towards their bills. People are actually very good at budgeting. And this idea that the government needs to come in and protect these people from their own earnings is ludicrous. Yes, it might be the case that there will be a few people who overspend, but
conceptually,
three-fourths
it's a different kind of budgeting. It's one thing.
It's a different kind of budgeting, but 3/4 of the
It's
income
one
that they
thing to
take out of their
manage a
pension
monthly
pots are
income
still going to be
coming into bank
taxed. That's an
accounts.
incentive. That may be the case, but 3/4 of the money that's coming out of these pensioners'
yes, but
pots is still going to be taxed. If that's not an incentive to keep
to deal with living.
Sorry, again.
But you're assuming that they have the familiarity with investment challenges, that they will know how much it's safe to draw out of their
Pensioners
pension
don't
pot.
have to
This is
pull out
not
their money into a
familiar
drawdown
territory.
to invest it. They can have a yearly payout annually.
Tom, sorry, just cease fire for a moment if you would. Kate, you make the point that this is the pensioners' money, and which is true as far as it goes, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's slightly disingenuous in the sense that, you know, when people... I'm working for a private employer. B-Sky B will actually throw in an awful lot of money to that pension pot. They do so because the government's encouraged it. I may choose to put in some additional voluntary contributions to my defined contributions pension. I'll do that because the government makes it tax efficient for me so to do. So in a sense, some of that...
Tax efficiency is great. It's a fantastic way for people to save their own money, but there's no question that this money is certainly not coming from the state. It's not a state pension. It's not state funded. Regardless of where the money is coming from, it is privately earned. And the key word there is earned. Even if your company is throwing in some money, even if you are choosing to throw in extra money to save that way, it means you're not putting it into another bank account to save it in a personal savings account. You're choosing to save it through your pensions. It's still your money. And this idea that people who are financially responsible throughout their whole lives are unable at the end of their life or towards the end of their life to say, oh, I'm all of a sudden going to throw away my money. It doesn't make sense with what we've seen people be able to do throughout the rest of their lives.
Tom, just a final thought of somebody who's in the thick of these reforms right now. It's been described as revolutionary, this freedom that's been given to pensioners now. You're identifying future teething problems down the track, but on the whole, you like what you see?
Absolutely. The broad direction of travel is good. I think it is being undertaken with reckless haste. I think there will be significant problems next year. Hopefully, if we can get through all of that, in the end we will arrive in a good place. But I think it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride.
Tom McPhail, Kate Andrews, thanks both very much indeed.